Hi guys, welcome back to Elephants in the Room. I'm joined by my co-host today here, Coco. If you're watching on video, you can see she's literally sitting in my lap. I don't have the heart to put her away in a crate or in a room when I film because usually I'm at home by myself when I'm filming. So she's just gonna sit in my lap and hang out. Also ignore the stupid fire alarm. I tried to fix it, it's not working. So just pretend like it's not beeping. I need to have someone come and fix it because my ladder is like not tall enough. But I also don't care that much. We're still gonna film because I just got back from tour and we're still in the process of getting all set up, and I feel like we've done way more. It's like coming together, which is awesome. But ignore the fire alarm. Also, I'm so bummed because I can't find my SD cards right now. So I'm only filming on one camera when I usually film on two cameras. So this video will not look like most videos that you guys have seen where it kind of switches between both camera angles. It's just going to be one today. But that's fine because that's not what this podcast is about. And I want to kind of just jump into today's subject. It's something that I feel like a lot of people have asked me about / were like requested on the podcast. And it's something that is really important and a huge part of my healing journey. So I figured, why not talk about it? I also feel like it's something that is very like taboo to talk about. Like a lot of people talk about it, but I want to, as always, kind of talk about some of the parts about it that are maybe harder than or easier said than done / like the truth about it, like what it really is like and what it really was like for me. So without further ado, let's just get into the episode. So today I want to talk about forgiveness. I want to talk about the struggle of my journey with forgiveness and also just my journey with learning how to forgive. Now, in this episode, I'm gonna talk a little bit about my faith, which obviously I've done in the past, and you guys know I'm a believer. That's something I think most of you know. But it is a pivotal part of my journey with this specific subject. Not to say that I don't think a lot of these things still apply, even if you're not a Christian. So just know that there will be some parts of my faith kind of spread out throughout this. But also these are just lessons and things I've learned through the process of forgiveness. And, some ways I can maybe encourage you guys and also just shine light on some of the parts that maybe aren't talked about, and just my journey. So like I said, no expert here, just a girl with a very interesting life story. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about forgiveness. And I have a lot of notes pulled up for this one just because I feel like it requires notes. But first, let's just start by like, what is forgiveness? I think we all have like a general understanding of what forgiveness means. Forgiveness involves willfully putting aside feelings of resentment towards someone who has committed a wrong, been unfair or hurtful, or otherwise harmed you in some way. Forgiveness is not merely accepting what happened or ceasing to be angry. So I think I definitely had a very skewed perception of forgiveness growing up because, number one, I grew up LDS, and number two, I didn't have a healthy relationship with my parents, and obviously grew up in a very like unhealthy home with a lot of toxicity and with a lot of brokenness. So I think that, naturally I very much never let myself be angry and or even resent and or even have even a space for any place of needing to forgive people because I just suppressed my emotions. And to survive through what I went through as a kid, I just didn't deal with anything. Like I just kept going and I just ignored any of the times that I felt betrayed, any of the times that I felt hurt, any of the times that I was abused, I was never angry. I was never an angry kid growing up. I was never angry at my mom, angry at my dad. Like, I didn't really experience a lot of anger, I feel like, growing up. And I feel like a lot of that is just because, or the reason that I didn't is just because I suppressed those emotions so much, because that was just my way of coping, was just like pretending like my life was normal and trying to pretend like nothing happened. And also being the peacemaker. Like, my whole childhood was about being the peacemaker and keeping the peace amongst everyone and amongst myself. Like, I was also deeply afraid of being abandoned. And so to attempt to make the people in my life who didn't choose me love me more and or stick around, I just operated out of a place of like desperation, I guess you could say. So yeah, there was a lot of things that my parents did growing up that I should have been angry about that I wasn't. And then leading into my marriage, there was a lot of things that happened in that marriage that I should have been angry about that I wasn't for a very long time, because my strategy to survive was to suppress my emotions and to, pretty much just ignore them. And I think it took me a really long time to get to a place where I really even understood what happened to me. And that was the first part of my forgiveness journey. And again, I think many of you know my story, so I don't want to bore you, but for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, I grew up, both my parents were addicts, and they obviously did a lot of bad things and weren't the best parents, and failed us in a lot of ways as children. And there was a lot of abuse and neglect that happened. And then leading into my adult years, I was married, and I don't want to speak too much on this, but there was betrayal and there was neglect and there was a lot of bad things that happened in my marriage throughout the course of it. So all of that to say, that's why I was angry and why I had things to forgive people for. But again, I didn't really realize or understand that I was upset or that I was angry or that I was bitter until I started my therapy journey. When I started my therapy journey was kind of a similar time to when I started really walking with Jesus and I left the religion. And I developed a relationship with Jesus, gave my life to Jesus. And that is a huge pivotal part of this as well. But when I started therapy, I was so sad and I was in so much distress, and all I wanted to do was to make my relationships work, and all I wanted to do was to keep those people in my life that had hurt me so deeply. And that's all that mattered to me, was not being abandoned and keeping those relationships and keeping those people happy and taking care of those people and trying to save those people and all these things. And that was how I initially felt when I started my walk with God and when I started therapy. It was kind of this big desperation of like, fix this, heal this, save this, God. Like, I had this idea of the way that I wanted things to go. And so there wasn't really a space for much anger in my heart, more just like sadness. And once I started to communicate the things that had happened to me and walk through my life story with my therapist, I started to really see what had happened to me, and started to actually see the ways that I was wronged and or betrayed or neglected or abused. And that was super, super hard to accept, because I idolized these people. I idolized my parents. I idolized my marriage. And it was really, really hard for me to not see them in a good light. And I think that that's an honest space, is that typically when we first start to accept and or validate the hurt that we've been through, we have to understand that there is going to come some anger. And there is going to come maybe a separation you feel emotionally with said person who hurt you. And your perception of them is going to start to change. And so that started to happen for me. And that was really scary. It was a really uncomfortable feeling for me. And I didn't want, to have to face that. And I didn't want to have to see things for the way that they truly were. But when I started to do that, it was, like I said, the beginning of my journey with forgiveness. I think there's a misconception about forgiveness, and I know this has been said before. I'm not the first person to say this, but you've heard people say, just because you forgive does not mean you have to forget, which is very true and very important to remember, because my perception of forgiveness before I really, really walked with the Lord and before I started therapy was that I just had to forgive and forget and forgive and forget. And any emotions, any pain that I experienced from things that people did to me, it didn't matter because I loved Jesus. And if I wanted to be like Jesus, I had to forgive and I had to eat with the sinners and I had to pretend like bad things never happened to me. And that is not forgiveness. And that's actually not healthy. And I believe that it truly creates a lot of resentment and bitterness buried deep within us, because at some point you're going to have to feel the emotions of what someone has done to you. If someone has hurt you, if someone has betrayed you, you are going to have to feel the pain that has been caused. And typically that pain will come with anger, whether it's towards yourself or towards them. And so I had such a skewed perception of forgiveness, and I thought that being Christ-like meant being a mat that people could just walk all over. And that's not the way that that's not the way it's supposed to be. And that's not what forgiveness is. And that's what I had to learn, which truly set me free, which then allowed me to actually have like true forgiveness for people in my life. Because looking back on all the times that I like forgave people and forgot and was like, well, I'm not mad at them. Well, I'm not mad at them. Well, I don't hold it against them. Truly, I was keeping score in my head. And this may sound complicated, but what I'm trying to say is, for every good deed I did, or for every time that I let go and or forgave or got rid of something that someone did to me, primarily my parents, and then obviously the person I was in a relationship with at the time, or primarily the close people in your life, I expected, if I do enough good, if I forgive enough, if I love enough, if I turn the cheek enough, they'll love me. That's truly what I believed. I learned that that's just not true, because love is so much more complex than we realize. And also, I've said this before, but people's love for you and the way that they treat you has nothing to do with you and has everything to do with them and things that they're dealing with. And yeah, it's not what I thought. It's just not what I thought. But all of that to say is that I thought that forgiving people meant that I had to forget. And that's the way that I saw forgiveness, was just forget, ignore, shove down, and don't hurt other people. Like, don't let people deal with the consequences of their own actions. I was so busy trying to save people from the messes that they made that I was just not even feeling anything that I needed to feel. So come to the point where I start my therapy journey and I start really walking with Jesus. Right around this time was when I had left the religion that I grew up in, the LDS church. And I had also started the separation/divorce process with my ex-husband. So there was a lot of betrayal and a lot of anger from that betrayal that I was feeling. I felt so betrayed from what I had always believed in, which was the church. I felt lied to. I felt betrayed. I felt manipulated. I felt let down. Like, I felt so much heavy emotion. And I also felt a lot of similar ways in my relationship, as well as my relationship with my parents. Because when I started therapy and I started walking with Jesus, I really started to see those relationships for what they truly were and where they currently were at, and the way that I was actually being treated. And so it's like, first it was this sadness, and then once I started to realize what had happened to me, I was angry for the first time like ever. I remember going into therapy and my therapist being like, this is good that you're angry. Like, it's okay to be angry. And I always thought that being angry was an emotion that was bad and that was sinful and that was evil. And yes, we shouldn't stay angry. But anger is a really, really important emotion that we are going to feel when we've been wronged or when we've been hurt or when we don't believe that something is right. And it's important to let yourself feel it. And I had to feel it. So if you feel like you're in the anger stage, that's okay. I feel like there was two pivotal parts to me learning how to forgive the people in my life that hurt me. And one of them was understanding that generally, when we feel hurt by someone or betrayed or not considered, it stems from a place of an expectation that people will not only follow through on their word, but that they will also treat you with the love, respect, and consideration that you would treat them. And so when they fail to do that, and when they lie, or when they hurt you, or when they don't consider you, it can feel like a betrayal. And so I think that that's typically where, at least for me, a lot of my wounds had stemmed from in my relationships. And so one of the most important things I had to do was to take that deep desire for care, consideration, and love that I hoped that those people would give to me and give it to myself. That was so important. And I know I've talked about that before, but you know, the verse that says like, you shall love your neighbor as you love thyself. I remember when I first read that verse as a new believer, and I was like, oh wow, if I'm actually loving my neighbor as I love myself, then I'm not going to love my neighbor right, because I don't even love myself. I'm not giving myself the same care and consideration and love and grace and patience that I'm giving to other people. So if it really says to love my neighbor as I love myself, well, I need to love myself more. And that was a big transition in my faith journey, and just understanding who Jesus really is and what I feel like the Bible really is, and understanding that being a Christian doesn't mean that you just have to let people walk all over you, or that you have to not have love for yourself, love and respect. So that really shifted things for me. But another part of that was understanding that all that love that I deeply desired from other people who let me down, I needed to give to myself. And that was a huge part of my forgiveness, which leads into kind of the next part of it. I want to jump first to talk about a little bit about what God says. No, well, where do I want to lead with this? Okay, yeah, let's just start here. So I want to talk a little bit about what the Bible says about forgiveness. So I think you guys generally know this, but obviously the Bible says to forgive your brother 77 times and more. So pretty much when we're wondering, well, how many times should we forgive someone, God? He's saying you continue to forgive them. Now, I know that's controversial, but I think it's because people have a skewed perception of what forgiveness actually means. And like I said, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. And forgiveness also doesn't mean that you allow that person to continue to treat you that way, and or that you need to continue to have a relationship with that person, and or that you need to continue to allow as much access to you as you did. So this is why this is important, because it says in the Bible, Peter asked Jesus, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Jesus responds, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. This expression means that we should forgive others without limit. Jesus calls us to forgive is not meant to be literal, but rather a call to a lifetime and lifestyle of forgiveness. And that really ties into the core of the gospel, which is that Jesus died for your sins and forgave you. So if he can forgive you and pay off your debt, metaphorically, how can you turn around and not do that to others? Does that make sense? And I think we all generally have the idea that whether you're a Christian or not, we're all imperfect people. We've all made mistakes. So how is it fair that we can do something behind closed doors or hurt someone or make a wrong decision, and then we can turn around and cast blame and judgment on someone who failed just like us? And yes, obviously that's complex, and some people are worse than others, you could say, and do worse things than others, but generally we are all sinful people who make mistakes. And when you start at that place, it helps you to understand that you are no better than anyone. Therefore, for you to sit there and judge someone else's failures, it just isn't the best. It isn't how Jesus calls us to live. And so that was a really humbling thing for me, was to realize, okay, I don't have to forget what's happened to me, and I don't have to invalidate the pain, but I also have been forgiven, and I also have been extended grace and love from God. So who am I to not give that to someone else? Because in my opinion, their mistakes and or sin are worse than mine. And I don't want to make it sound complicated. It really is as simple as the fact that Jesus did forgive us, and he paid off our debt of all of our mistakes in this life and has set us free. And who are we to not extend that to other people? And part of that is that vengeance and judgment is the Lord's, it's not ours. So seeking out revenge against someone, it's not for you. They say that you reap what you sow, and truly that is come to life in my life. I have seen that to be true. The people that have hurt me and the wrong things that have been done to me. It's not to say that their lives are horrible and all these things, but I have seen in my life countless times that what people reap, they will sow. The vengeance is the Lord's. I truly believe that. And that's not to say we should want there to be revenge or ill will being done on people that have hurt us, but there are consequences for our actions. And even if you don't see someone experiencing them right now, they will experience them at one point. Now, all of that to say, yes, God tells us to forgive. Yes, God tells us to be compassionate to one another just as he is to us, and extend the grace and love that he extends to us, as well as not judging people, because we also should be judged because we're all imperfect, right? We're all on the same page there. Yes, he says that. But what he also says is that this shifted things for me. I understood that as angry as I was and as hurt as I was by what people had done to me, that I was no better than them. And my sins and or my mistakes may look different than someone else's, but that does not mean I am better or worse than someone else, because it's so much more complex than that. So I had to see that. And that humbled me a lot. But this is what I want to encourage you with, because I think we don't need to get it twisted and jaded and just think that we just need to forgive people and not forget. And that, oh, well, God forgave us, so we forgive others. It's yes, that's all true. But also we serve a God who is loving logical and cares about his children. Like, he doesn't want you to be hurt, betrayed, lied to, abused by someone. That's not God's will. That's not what he wants. And so it's like God also has righteous anger towards people who hurt his children. And so it's not to say that it excuses what happened to you. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is it's more complex than that. I want to explain this. So yes, God calls us to forgive. And reminder, forgiving is not forgetting. Secondly, God also calls us to guard our hearts. I realize that God actually calls us to not associate and or surround ourselves with people that continue to hurt us. And there's a reason for that. Number one, we can't save people. We've got to get that idea out of our head. You can't save someone. You cannot save them. You cannot change them. We've got to change our perspective of loving others and enabling others. I stayed in so many relationships and situations that were harmful to me and that person because I wanted to save them and I wanted to change them. No, if someone's hurting you, if someone is doing wrong continually, time and time again, it is not your responsibility to stay in that space. Like, that's not what God wants you to do. And so when I realized, number one, okay, God calls us to forgive because he forgave us. But number two, he actually also calls us to separate ourselves from people that continually hurt us. He calls us to guard our hearts. When I realized that, that was life-changing for me because I started to see, wait, I can forgive people and also respect myself enough to step away from people who have hurt me, who have wronged me, who have betrayed me, who continue to disrespect me. And that doesn't make me a bad person. That doesn't make me un-Christ-like. That is such a toxic idea of forgiveness, is that everyone that we forgive, we have to continue to have relationships with, and that we have to continue to allow the same access to. If someone is hurting you, if someone is abusing you, if someone is mistreating you, it is actually the most loving thing to walk away and or to set much more firm boundaries and remove access and closeness to you in that relationship. Like, that is loving. That is a loving thing to do. Not only to yourself, but to them. Because it's not fun for people to hurt you. And if people hurt you, even if they don't realize it in the moment, and even if they don't realize how terrible they are being to someone in the moment, one day they will. One day they will. So not only are you causing more pain to yourself, but you're also causing this other person to continue to make these bad decisions, which one day they will have to face. And one day they will have to accept, and that will hurt them. One day they will realize they will have pain from the ways that they wronged you. And so it's like, when I realized I don't have to continue to have relationships and allow disrespect from people in my life just because I want to forgive them. So that leads me to my next point. You need to validate your pain. Whatever it is that has been done to you, for you to truly be able to forgive someone in your life, you have to accept what has happened to you. And you have to allow the anger to be what it is. It's okay to be angry. It's what you do with that anger that I've learned that really matters. And also, part of that is getting it out. Do not ignore, invalidate, or shove down what has happened to you or the pain that you feel. You need to talk to someone. You need to get it out, whether that's with God, whether that's writing it down in a notebook, talking to a therapist, talking to a friend. Like, you have to allow yourself the space to freely speak about what has happened to you and what has hurt you. And if you don't let it out, it is so hard, I feel like, to truly heal and to also start the forgiveness process. Forgiveness is complicated, but part of forgiveness is walking in truth. Like, you have to, there's nothing wrong with standing up for yourself. There's nothing wrong with sharing how you feel or holding people accountable for the ways that they've hurt you. that's important. Forgiveness is not ignoring or getting rid of. It's like you can hold people accountable in your life and you can share what they've done and how it's affected you and why you believe that it's wrong, and stand up for yourself, walk in truth. That's okay to do. I feel like that's truly a part of forgiveness. And for me, a part of forgiveness was really walking in truth, sticking up for myself, being honest, being truthful to my character, and not letting myself continue to be put in unsafe situations. That's okay. And so, yeah, I just feel like that is part of forgiveness. But really, I think forgiveness is what you do after. So it's like, yes, let yourself be angry. Let yourself be hurt. Let yourself be whatever emotion you're feeling. Like, you have to let yourself. But it's what you do with it after. Okay, so first I want to talk about a couple more of the things I feel like I've learned about forgiveness. And then I also want to talk to you guys about ways that I feel like you can move forward in your relationship with someone who has hurt you, who you want to still have a relationship with, and also how to move forward in a relationship with someone that you've chosen, hey, maybe I actually don't want to continue this relationship, and how you can act on and have forgiveness within both of those scenarios. So I want to talk about that. But first, I want to talk about a couple more of the things I've learned about forgiveness. Forgiving others for their mistakes helps you forgive yourself and have more grace and patience for the ways you fail in everyday life. I think when I started to forgive other people in my life, truly, it did really help me start to also forgive myself, because just as much as I was angry at the people in my life that had betrayed me and that hurt me and that had abused me, I was also angry at myself for choosing to stay in those situations. And not only that, but because of my trauma and because of the unhealthy coping strategies and or just ways of life that I learned, I overanalyzed everything that I ever did in those relationships and wanted to blame myself for the ways that they went wrong, and wanted to analyze every little decision that I made. And if I would have done this differently, maybe they would have loved me. Maybe they wouldn't have hurt me. Maybe this. And so I overanalyzed myself and tried to take all the blame rather than seeing it for what it truly was. And that as much as, yes, the people who hurt me, they were to blame, but also I was to blame for allowing myself to stay in those relationships. And that also helped me forgive myself when I started to extend forgiveness for them. And I feel like this is really important to understand. And this is something that really shifted my perspective on forgiveness as well. You can hate the action of what someone did to you without hating them. And I think that was so pivotal for me to see, because I felt like I couldn't be angry or hate any of it. I didn't want to hate the person. I didn't want to hate what they did. I didn't know how to separate the person from what they did to me. And when you can separate the person and the thing that they did to you, you can actually have, I feel like, a healthy anger. You can look at what they did, whether it was they betrayed you, they lied to you, they cheated on you, they abused you, whatever it is. You can look at that thing and you can hate that thing. I hate lying. I hate being betrayed. I hate being cheated on. I hate being abused. Those are terrible, evil things. They're not good things. They're hurtful. They're painful. They cause so much trauma and so much just pain. And I can hate those things and hate what happened to me, but I can also choose to separate the person that did them to me from the hatred of said thing. So it's okay to have anger towards something, but starting to shift that anger away from the person and on to the action is really powerful, because I feel like it allows you a space to really feel those things without necessarily having to hate an individual, because there's nothing good that comes from hating someone. And there's also nothing good that comes to holding on to bitterness and anger. Like, that is what forgiveness truly is. And I know everyone has said this and you guys have heard this before, but forgiveness is for yourself. You are letting yourself out of the cage and the prison of anger and bitterness and resentment that you put yourself and that person in. You think by holding on to what someone did to you and holding on to the resentment and bitterness and anger towards that person, you think that hurts them and you think that holds them in a prison cell. It actually holds you in a prison cell. That's what's so crazy about not forgiving people and not having forgiveness in your life, is that it actually really only affects you. That feeling, they don't really have to feel that. They're not dealing with it. You are dealing with it. It's like holding on to something so tight with so much tension. It's so much tension. And you're holding on and you're holding on and you're holding on. And truly, it's like you're really only the one feeling that tension. That pain is you. And when you let go of that, you're going to feel that release. You're going to feel that peace. It's not about them, because if you're angry at someone and you're like, you know what, they don't deserve my forgiveness, you're probably right. They don't. But do you know who deserves it? You. You deserve to let go of what happened to you, not to forget, but to move past and to move on with peace and joy, because bitterness and resentment only affects you. And that sucks to think about, but it's like you are actually doing it for you. And yes, if you're a Christian like me, it's also because you love Jesus, but forgiveness is also an act of self-love. And I don't think people realize that. And I didn't realize that. And I think that's why I held on to bitterness and anger, because once I did realize everything that happened to me and all the ways that people have hurt me, I was mad. I was so angry. I was so bitter at the world. I thought my life was ruined because of what other people had done to me, until I realized that what other people do has nothing to do with me. And if someone's actions affected my life, yeah, that sucks. But the only thing I can do is pick up my own life, my own heart, myself, and move forward. Because other people's lives have nothing to do with me, and I can't continue to allow myself to be in a space to be hurt. So, like I said, hate the action, hate what happened to you, but you don't have to hate the person, because it truly doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't help you. It just hurts you. I now want to talk about two different scenarios and just some tips I feel like I've learned, or things I've learned. So let's say you are working towards forgiving someone that you want to continue to have a relationship with. I want to tell you some important things, in my opinion. If someone in your life has hurt you, wronged you, betrayed you, whatever it may be, and you are struggling to forgive them, I want you to see that forgiveness is about you. It's not about them. It's not about their actions. So you can still forgive someone who's not willing to change and who's not willing to take accountability for what they did. But I think to really, truly walk in a relationship with someone who has hurt you like that, they also have to be willing to take accountability for their actions, validate your pain, and be willing to change. If you continually allow yourself to be in a relationship with someone who is not willing to consider changing the way that they operate in the relationship because it hurts you, you're not really setting yourself up for success. Like, again, that's not to say you can't forgive someone, but I'm saying if you want to continue to walk in a relationship with someone who's wronged you and you are working to forgive them, I'm just saying, yes, you can forgive them, but to really walk in the relationship and to really be able to have healthiness for yourself, you can give people second chances, you can give people third chances, but you should be looking at the relationship and really thinking, is this person willing to change? Is this person validating what they've done? Or is this person validating the hurt that I've experienced because of what they've done? Is this person taking accountability for their actions? And if that's not happening, you might need to reevaluate if you want that relationship to be in your life, and or how much access and closeness you want to allow in that relationship in your life out of protection for yourself. And I know I've said this before, but boundaries are good. Boundaries are loving. Like if you're in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, family, a romantic relationship, whatever relationship that you're in right now that you're struggling to find forgiveness in, and that you're wanting to continue even though you're feeling maybe some bitterness or anger or resentment. If someone has wronged you, if someone has hurt you, if someone has betrayed you, just because you forgive them does not mean that you shouldn't walk with boundaries. Like boundaries are loving. I remember one of my favorite people, Matthias, you guys know him. He's a psychotherapist. He talked about how boundaries, it's almost like a cast that you put on a broken arm. Why do you put a cast on a broken arm? To help it heal. And also part of it is that when you put a cast on a broken arm, it's preventing movement from the wound, from the broken bone, right? So it's like, it's preventing that movement, which then in turn is going to help that wound heal. So oftentimes the most loving thing to do in relationships is to place boundaries around that wound to protect further damage from what's already broken and allow it to heal. So boundaries are good. Boundaries are so good. And so I want you to know that if you're walking in a relationship with someone you're aiming to forgive, you can forgive them no matter what they do. But to continue walking in a relationship with someone, it is important to have someone who is willing, who is aware, and who is taking accountability for their actions. Now, if you have realized, hey, I'm really hurt by this person, I'm betrayed, I've been abused, whatever it may be, and you've come to the place where you now realize, I don't want to have a relationship with them anymore, but you're struggling to forgive them, I want to encourage you so much with this. I never thought in my life that I would come to a place where I would feel indifferent towards some of the people who have hurt me. And truly, you will get to a place when what happened to you doesn't affect you the same way that it does. And even if it's something that you never forget, and even if it's something that brings pain to you when you think about it, you will heal, you will move on, you will move forward. And the best thing you can do is to let them go and let what they did go. And that does not mean forget. That does not mean that it's just gone. No. It means that you're releasing them from the debt, like the debt that they owe because of what they did to you. You're saying, God, I give you this person and I'm letting it go. You deal with them how you may. I'm going to forgive them and I'm going to move forward in my life. And that is the best thing you can do. Now, let's clear up the elephant in the room. Like, forgiveness takes time, and it's also a continual act. It's a continual act of faith, and it's a continual willingness. There are even times in my life now where thoughts or memories or things creep back up in. And it's easy to have anger and or resentment and or bitterness. And so forgiveness is a continual giving it to God and a continual letting it go and a continual surrendering and saying, hey, I'm going to choose to forgive. That does not mean I'm going to choose to forget. That does not mean that my anger and my pain is invalid. That does not mean that this doesn't affect me. That does not mean that that person gets off the hook. They don't get off the hook. They will reap what they sow. If someone has hurt you, one day they will have to face the pain that they have done to you. But that is their healing journey, not yours. That is their forgiveness journey, not yours. And the best thing you can do for yourself is allow yourself to forgive yourself and others to truly heal and move on, because that's what you deserve, especially after everything that's happened to you. If you're struggling to forgive and you're struggling to move past, you deserve peace. You deserve joy, especially if you've been hurt. And it's like, why hold yourself back from that just because you're angry at someone, because you're resentful, because you have bitterness? You deserve to feel those things. So forgiveness does not happen overnight. I just want to say that. It doesn't. When I was going through everything that I went through, when people were like, just forgive, be like Jesus, just forgive. It was like, what? How do I just forgive? How do I just forget? And hindsight, looking back now, time truly does heal. And it's not necessarily the time that heals, but it's what happens in the confines of those times. So much is going to happen in your life. And so much healing is going to happen in your life. And so much growth is going to happen in your life. And so much joy is going to happen in your life. And so much peace. And that's going to continue to happen in your life. And over time, somehow along the way, it all works together to get you to a place where you can forgive people. And I know that sounds so backwards and so confusing. But when I tell you, people used to tell me that, oh, Nicole, like time heals all. I was like, whatever. Sure. Doesn't feel like it. But all you can focus on is every day loving yourself, respecting yourself, removing yourself from situations that are hurting you and from people that are hurting you, letting people into your life that love you properly and that try and that are willing and that show you the same love and patience and grace that you show them. Not to say that anyone's going to be perfect in your life. And along the way somewhere, that forgiveness happens. But the first step is being willing and is being humble enough to know, I want to forgive, as hard as it is. And again, it's so much less about them and it's so much more about you. And it's also the right thing to do, I believe. So I really just want to say that forgiveness is something that truly has set me free. So much so. And it's something that I have to continue and that I'm continuing to attempt to do in my life, because things happen every single day. You know, it's like we go through things all the time. People hurt us all the time. But truly working towards forgiveness and being open to and asking God for it, and also allowing myself the space and the time to get there, was the best thing that I could have ever done. So I hope that this encouraged you guys. I hope that this made sense. I know it's so confusing, and I know it looks so much easier, or it's easier said than done. It's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. And if you're in the midst of anger and bitterness and resentment and you're wanting to forgive, just know you're not alone. And there's a process of healing. There's a grieving process. There's a forgiveness process, and it takes time. So don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. I just want to close out with a prayer. And then we'll get off this episode. Dear Heavenly Father, I come before you, God. I just pray over anyone watching this. I just pray over anyone who is feeling angry, who is feeling betrayed, who is feeling neglected, who is hurt, who has been abused, God, who is experiencing these emotions and doesn't know what to do with them and wants to forgive but cannot forget. I pray that you show them and you remind them that vengeance is yours, Lord. And not only vengeance, God, but you will take care of them. You have them. You love them just as you love the person who hurt them. We can hate the act. We can hate the sin without hating the other person, because it does nothing for us. It does nothing for them, and does nothing for your kingdom, God. I just pray that you show up for people and let them feel your comfort. Let them be honest with you. Let them feel the anger. Let them feel the hurt, and help them to know what to do with it, God. I pray for healing in your name. Amen. I love you guys so much. I will talk to you guys next week. So without further ado, what? See, I don't even know. Do I even like my intro or outro? I don't even know what I just said, guys. My brain's not working. But what elephants are in your room? I will talk to you next week.